Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Matt, and in this video we're going to talk about the 7 different money steps of how to prioritize your money step by step. Now these 7 steps are something that I've actually utilized myself to kind of get in order with budgeting, with investing. It's essentially just a full, complete guide to how to actually prioritize everything. Now I've personally used these 7 different steps myself to kind of get on track with my finances and everything. So I'm very excited to share these with you guys and kind of give you what's worked for me and give you, the 7 steps to kind of organizing and prioritizing everything. These steps are meant to be followed in order from the beginning to the end, so that's important. And you shouldn't really skip any of these steps. And there's a really cool flow chart that I'll be able to link down below for you guys to check out if you want to have a visual representation of everything. So to start everything off will actually be step 0. So this is before you actually start any of these 7 different steps. First thing you want to do is look at your budget and reduce your expenses. So bottom line, fundamentally, I think everyone knows that you have to have your budget in order, your finances in order. And so if you don't have a budget, you should create one just so you know what's coming in, what's going out, and you have a general idea of actually what you're left with at the end of the day. A budget will help identify certain areas that you may not know yourself that need to be worked on. Let's say certain expenses that might need to be fixed, because the goal with this budget is to see what you have left over to actually move forward with the next steps. And so the budget will obviously include all of the regular things that you kind of spend in your day-to-day life every month. So this would include things like your rent, your mortgage, utilities, the groceries that you pay for every single month, stuff that you pay for personally, let's say for your hygiene or for your health, the way you get to your work and earn your income, so let's say your car, anything related to transportation, taxes, and also your minimum payments on all the debts that you currently have. So that's the very first thing you need to look at before you start these 7 different steps. So first off, we got step 1, which is to set up your emergency fund. So an emergency fund is essentially an amount of money and a savings account that is always liquid and always accessible, that if you ever need it, is there for you. This money is really intended to cover the very unexpected circumstances, like a loss of a job. Let's say there's a big repaired item, like you need to fix your car or something like that. Something very unexpected that happens, that's where this would kind of cover it. And should you ever actually use your emergency fund, you have to come back to step 1 and make sure you have it covered. Now, in terms of how much money to have in your emergency fund, generally the rule is to have about 3 to 6 months of expenses. And especially if your income is kind of all over the place and you're not making the same amount every month, you should actually have more than that. So you maybe look at having 9 to 12 months of expenses. This is because if you're making different amounts every month, it's even more uncertain for you, so you should actually save a little bit extra. And if you're actually paying any sort of high interest debt, you should actually try to go for about a 1 to 2 month emergency fund while you're actually paying down that high interest debt. And in terms of where to put this emergency fund, generally it should be kept in a high interest savings account where it's completely safe and it's always there. The goal of this emergency fund is to never go down and to always stay at a certain level, or to keep growing, right? Because it will be collecting interest. You should also never invest this amount of money. This is just for complete emergency. All right, so we got step 2. Okay, so step 2 is actually employer matched retirement funds. So if you're working currently at a job and your employer offers, let's say RRSP matching, generally you definitely want to take advantage of this no matter what, because essentially, let's say you are able to put 5 or 10% of your paycheck or whatever it is. Generally, a lot of companies will match, let's say 50%, 100% sometimes of whatever you contribute. So you definitely want to take advantage of this. It's essentially free money. So make sure you do this. This is very important if you're working, for a larger company that does this, and even smaller companies do this too. All right, so step number 3 is to pay down any high interest debt. So at this point in time, you should actually look at paying down any sort of high interest debts that you have. Any extra money left over, make sure you start paying that off, especially if it's over a 10% interest rate, just because if it's high interest over 10%, it's not going to serve you better in any kind of other area, like investing or anything. You want to pay this down first. This is so crucial. And obviously, once this is paid off, then that's when you kind of bump up money into your emergency fund again to make sure you have about 3 to 6 months. Once that high interest debt is paid off, then you want to focus on the mid-range interest rates, so about 5 to 6%, and then obviously the low ones you can kind of slowly pay off. But essentially, you want to tackle the highest interest rates first. So step number 4 is actually saving for a large purchase or personal investment. So what this is essentially, if you're planning on saving up for a house, like a down payment, you definitely wouldn't want to invest this money. You would want to, again, create a separate savings account and then start pushing money into there, whatever is left over, and start building that up. This could definitely be a thing like a house down payment. Let's say you want to buy a car, or it's, let's say you want to go back to school and you have to pay for education. That's where you can kind of save up. And again, this kind of savings can go into a high interest savings account. So you're gonna wanna really utilize this tool. And I'll post a few different banks below if you wanna check them out. All right, so once you start saving for that kind of personal large purchase, you'll then get to step 5, which is saving for retirement. And at this point, let's say you don't have any big purchases you want to save for and you don't have any high interest debt, none of the previous steps, then you would then come to this step. And at this point, you should try to save and invest about 15% of your pre-tax income for retirement. Now, obviously, you want to do your absolute best to try and save and invest even more. If you can save and invest, let's say 20, 25%, 30, 40, 50, the more the better, because that means you will actually be able to retire sooner because you will be pushing more and more of your income into your investments, which will grow and help it grow quicker. You've probably heard a lot about, let's say, the FIRE movement, where if you can save, 50, 55, 60% of your income, then you can retire, in under 10 years or sometimes 7 years. I mean, I have kind of my own thoughts on that whole thing, so I'll be most likely making a video on that in the future. But bottom line, try and save at least 15%. If you can't swing it, aim for about 10% and then try to work your way up to 15. This is so important because generally everyone needs to retire at some point, unless you want to be working forever or you absolutely love your job and you don't want to retire. But even then, if you don't want to retire, generally you should save up something at the end of the day. It is so important. It's such a good habit to build early. All right, so after step 5, we get to step 6, which is paying off your low interest debt. So at this point, if you have any sort of low interest debt that's around, let's say 1%, 0.5%, 2%, the extreme low end, that's when you want to start paying it off, after, let's say, you put your money for retirement. And then finally, we get to step 7, which is saving for any other goals or any other things. So this is essentially after, you pay off everything, you're saving for retirement. Let's say you have your short-term savings for, let's say, a wedding or a house. Then you would then start saving in, let's say, a separate account too, for something like vacations, or let's say you want to take a big trip, or let's say you want to start saving for your children's university fund. Or you could actually increase the retirement savings that you're saving. So let's say bump it from 15% to 25, 30. So if you kind of start this whole process from the beginning, look at all the steps and make sure you're doing them all right, you for sure are on the right track to, financial prosperity, financial freedom, and obviously you will have a good future. Now, I find this 7 steps so interesting, and it's really helped me because it's really helped me, let's say, fix anything that I didn't really think about before, that kind of changed my thoughts on, let's say, an emergency fund and all that stuff, because you always have to be prepared for something like that. But it is so important to kind of look through these steps and determine where you might have some weaknesses. And then with step 0, looking at your budgeting, right? So making sure that you're not spending more than you're making, that you have something left at the end of the day to then start contributing to these 7 steps. And this is a very kind of high level guide, but it's a very good guideline. It's helped me a lot, and I will link below to where I found this particular guide, and I'll even include the diagram below. It's a really nice kind of flow chart from step 0 all the way to the bottom that you can kind of look at. All right, guys, if you found value in these 7 money steps, I'd appreciate it if you smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. It'll help me push the video to a different audience. If they need any help with their money steps, you'll be able to help them as well. I'd really appreciate that. Of course, subscribe for more videos in the future, and I'll see you guys in the next video.